From the person who always says yes to someone who knows how to say no in a world where kindness is repaid with exploitation, there's a truth no one dares to speak: the best people are always the most miserable ones. They are the most obedient daughters in the family, but also carry the heaviest burdens. The most dedicated employees, but also the ones who get the most work dumped on them. The friends who are always there, but also the loneliest when they themselves need someone. It's not because the world is unfair. It's because they built a system where they are the victims. Every time they say yes when their heart wants to say no, they're sending a painful message: I don't deserve respect. My needs can be trampled on. My time has no value. Everyone else's happiness is more important than my existence. And then they wonder why their life feels like hell. You are the creator of your own suffering. Every "it's okay," every forced smile, every time you swallow tears to make others comfortable, all of this has built the golden cage you're imprisoning yourself in. But what if I told you that everything you believe about choosing yourself is a lie? That the terrible things you imagine will happen are actually the greatest miracles that could come to you? That losing some people is actually the only way to find those who are truly worthy? This isn't empty consolation. This is testimony from those who had enough courage to break free from the trap they created themselves. And what they discovered will make you reconsider everything. Why are we so afraid of being selfish? There are words that can wound a person without touching them. Selfish is one of them. It's not simply a word, it's a psychological weapon, designed to attack directly at human psychology. Just having someone whisper this word, an entire defense system in the brain collapses. The boundaries you've built, the principles you've established, the dreams you're pursuing all vanish in an instant. You're ready to sacrifice everything: health, money, time, even dreams, just to prove you're not the villain in the story. But why does a simple word have such devastating power? Why can it make a mature, successful, educated person tremble like a scolded child? Because it awakens humanity's most ancient fear, the fear of being cast out from the tribe. To understand this word's power, we need to return to primitive times, when our ancestors lived in small hunter-gatherer groups. In that world, being accepted into the tribe wasn't just an emotional matter, it was a matter of survival. An individual cast out from the tribe would face unimaginable dangers. No one to protect them from predators lurking in darkness. No one to share food when hunting failed. No one to care for them when injured or sick. No one to keep watch while they slept. Loneliness didn't just mean sadness, it meant certain death. Therefore, our ancestors' brains evolved to do anything to avoid this situation. They would share their last meal, sleep less to guard others, accept the most dangerous jobs, even sacrifice their lives to protect the tribe. Because individual survival depended entirely on community acceptance. The brain memorized a simple but powerful message: anything that could make me seen as a burden, any behavior that could make the tribe see me as no longer useful, any trait that could make them see me as a threat, all must be eliminated immediately. Though modern civilization has advanced far beyond this, though we no longer need the tribe for physical survival, the brain still operates according to this primitive method. When someone calls you selfish, they're unconsciously awakening this ancient survival alarm system. The subconscious screams, danger. About to be expelled. I will die. Must fix immediately. And from childhood, systematically, we've been programmed to react exactly this way. Being good means you must know how to sacrifice. These seemingly harmless phrases actually contain terrible psychological power. They're designed to create adults who always put others' needs before their own. Good children must obey their parents. Here, good means absolute obedience, with no room for personal opinions or personal boundaries. Girls must know how to yield and accommodate. This message teaches that women are born to serve, that their happiness is less important than others' comfort. Don't be selfish, think of others. This lays the foundation for always putting yourself second, third, or even last in every situation. Family must be united, don't make everyone uncomfortable. Teaching children that fake peace is more important than personal honesty. Each such statement isn't just a simple moral lesson. They are stones placed one by one to build a wall in the child's mind, creating an unshakable belief system. Gradually, these messages combine into a deadly equation in the subconscious: wanting to be loved equals must self-destruct. The sad thing is that those who transmit these messages, parents, teachers, relatives, usually come from good intentions. They believe they're teaching their children to become good people, useful citizens. They don't realize they're unconsciously creating individuals who will spend their entire lives serving others' needs while neglecting their own. And after decades of such training, we've become perfect prisoners, those who imprison themselves without needing any guards. 4 invisible chains tightening around you every day. Chain 1, the fear of becoming useless. Try a simple psychological experiment. Imagine from tomorrow, your phone goes completely silent. No one calls asking you to help them move. No one needs you to listen to them talk about their complicated relationships. No one asks you to babysit on weekends. No one says I can't live without you or only you understand this situation. What's the first feeling that arises in you? If you're someone used to being needed, the answer might be panic. A deep, vague panic, as if something fundamental about yourself has just been threatened. This happens because for those who have tied their personal identity to usefulness, not being needed isn't just an inconvenience, it's a form of social death. They've defined themselves through the lens of what they can do for others, not through who they are. This phenomenon has deep psychological roots. From childhood, many people learned that love is conditional. They were praised, hugged, and cared for when they were helpful, when they were obedient, when they didn't bother anyone, when they put others' needs first. Conversely, when they showed personal needs, when they needed care, when they were selfish, they were often met with coldness, ignored, or even punished. A child's brain will conclude logically, I am loved when I am useful. If I am not useful, I will not be loved. If I am not loved, I will be abandoned. And if I am abandoned, I will die. As adults, this logic becomes an automatic program running in the subconscious. The feeling of being needed doesn't just bring joy, it operates like a natural addictive drug. When someone says only you can help me with this problem or I completely trust you, the brain releases large amounts of dopamine and oxytocin, hormones that create feelings of happiness and strong bonding. But like real drugs, the body gradually develops tolerance. The initial dose is no longer enough to create the same feeling. You need to sacrifice more, work harder, put yourself in more difficult situations to get that same feeling of being important and loved. This leads to a dangerous vicious cycle. The more you need to feel important, the more you do for others. The more you do, the more exhausted you become. The more exhausted you become, the more you need external validation to feel valuable. And the cycle continues. When faced with the possibility of losing this dopamine supply, the brain panics and issues emergency orders: do anything, accept any conditions, sacrifice anything, just don't let them see you as useless. Chain 2, the terror of loneliness at 35, making new friends is no longer as simple as it was in school, when you could become best friends with someone just by sitting next to them in class or playing the same sport. In the adult world, everyone has their own life, family, responsibilities. Free time is scarce, and they usually spend it with people they've known for years. This means losing your current friend group, even though they may be clearly exploiting you, can lead to serious psychological consequences. Not just long lonely weekends, holidays with no one remembering you, birthdays passing in silence. But also those times when you really need help, when you're seriously ill and need someone to drive you to the hospital, when you face a financial crisis and need emergency money, when you go through an emotional crisis and need someone to listen, and don't know who to call. In today's social media world, where everyone constantly shares happy moments, beautiful trips, fun parties. Being alone is not just painful but also embarrassing. It's like a giant billboard announcing to the world, I have failed at maintaining relationships. There's something wrong with me. This fear is amplified by the scary stories we often hear about lonely people, elderly people who die in their apartments and aren't discovered for weeks, middle-aged people living as hermits becoming burdens to society, isolated individuals gradually losing social skills and the ability to integrate. The fear is nurtured by cultural messages constantly reminding us that happiness comes from relationships, that no one can live alone, that lonely people are those who have problems. We're not taught that there are different types of loneliness: positive loneliness, time alone for recovery and growth, and negative loneliness, unwanted isolation. The result is many people would rather accept toxic relationships, friends who only take but never give, family members who constantly exploit their kindness, than face the possibility of loneliness. They cling to these relationships like drowning people clinging to rotten wood, even knowing these relationships are slowly dragging them to the bottom. They think, having exploitative friends is still better than having no one at all. Having a family that demands too much is still better than being completely alone. Having colleagues who only come to you when they need help is still better than having no one to talk to. Chain 3, the obsession with financial disaster in modern society, where employment doesn't just determine income but also determines access to health insurance, ability to rent housing, even ability to maintain social relationships. Saying no to those in power can lead to serious financial consequences. This is particularly clear in professions called human services, education, healthcare, social work, customer care, industries where women make up the majority. In these environments, being kind, willing to help, having team spirit is not just encouraged but actually becomes a condition for survival. A nurse might have excellent professional knowledge, but if she refuses to work overtime when the hospital is short-staffed, if she's not willing to switch shifts for colleagues at the last minute, if she sets boundaries about not taking calls outside work hours, she might be labeled as not having team spirit, difficult, or not fitting with company culture. In the business world, especially startups and tech companies, company family culture is often used as a tool to exploit employee dedication. Those who set boundaries about work time, those who refuse to participate in team-building activities outside hours, those who aren't willing to go the extra mile to complete projects might be seen as not having passion, not fitting with a growing company. For freelancers or those whose jobs depend on networks, saying no can mean losing important future opportunities. In many industries, especially creative ones, personal relationships are often more important than professional skills. Refusing to help a colleague today might mean they won't refer you to potential clients tomorrow. Behind every "I can't do this" or "I need time to rest" is the image of unpaid utility bills, house payments that need to be made, children who need school fees, health insurance that might be cut, retirement plans that might vanish into thin air. This fear isn't baseless. In an economy where jobs can be lost at any time, in a society where healthcare costs can bankrupt a family, protecting your job becomes the top priority, even at the cost of sacrificing mental and physical health. Chain 4, the obsession with becoming the villain. Humans have a fundamental and powerful psychological need to be seen as good people. Not just simply not wanting to be hated, but wanting to be loved, respected, seen as someone who contributes positively to the community. We want to be the lovable protagonist in our life story, not the despicable villain in someone else's story. This fear becomes extreme when we imagine scenarios where someone tells others, "She's changed, become selfish. Before she was so good, always ready to help, now." In our minds, we draw images of hundreds of people sitting around cafe tables, shaking their heads in disappointment, talking about our fall from grace with tones of regret and judgment. This is especially painful for those who have spent years building a reputation as a good person. They've invested so much in their image as someone who's always available, reliable, someone everyone can depend on. This good person identity has become a core part of themselves. When they start setting boundaries, when they start saying no, when they start prioritizing their own needs, they feel like they're betraying themselves. They feel like they're becoming a completely different person, and not in a positive direction. But the sad thing is that society often reinforces this fear. We live in a culture that glorifies sacrifice and sees self-care as a sign of weakness or selfishness. We're taught that good people always put others first, that true love means unconditional sacrifice, that truly strong people are those who can endure everything without ever complaining. The stories we're told from childhood, from fairy tales to Hollywood movies, constantly reinforce this message. The princess always sacrifices for the kingdom. The mother always sacrifices for her children. The hero always sacrifices for the community. And the characters who think of themselves first? They're always the villains. The result is many people would rather self-destruct than face the possibility of being seen as selfish. They'd rather endure abuse, rather live in suffering, rather abandon their dreams, than risk having someone think badly of them. The self-destructive vicious cycle. The most tragic and paradoxical thing about all this is, trying to avoid these fears actually creates the very outcomes we're trying to avoid. When you're always available, when you always say yes, when you always put others' needs before your own, you don't become more lovable. Instead, you become taken for granted. People don't value what they can easily get. They only value what's rare, what requires effort to obtain. When you have no boundaries, when you're always ready to sacrifice for others, you don't attract kind people who appreciate you. Instead, you attract people who also have no boundaries, but in the opposite way. You attract parasites, people who take but don't give, people who see your kindness as a free service they have the right to use. You create a world where you're abused, then use that reality to prove that you need to continue giving, continue sacrificing, continue putting others first to be accepted and loved. You live in an illusion that if you're good enough, useful enough, sacrificial enough, then eventually everyone will love you properly. Carl Jung had a profound and bitter observation: until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And that's exactly what's happening to us. These unconscious fears, fear of not being needed, fear of loneliness, fear of poverty, fear of being hated, are stealing our entire lives without us realizing it. We think we're making free choices, but we're actually just dancing to the tune of old traumas and programming. We live like puppets controlled by invisible strings, and we don't even recognize the existence of those strings. We call it personality, values, morals, but really it's just fear disguised as virtue. But what happens when we have enough courage to look directly at these strings? When we decide to cut them, even though it might be painful initially. When we decide that our lives are also worth respecting, prioritizing, and loving like anyone else's life. That's when real miracles begin to happen. That's when we step from the hell of living for others into the heaven of living as ourselves. 7 most important things that will happen when you choose yourself. 1. You will lose some people, and discover the painful truth about conditional love. The first and perhaps most shocking thing that will happen isn't that you lose loved ones in your life. It's that you discover a bitter truth: most of these people never truly loved you. When you start setting your first boundaries, when you first say "I can't do this," when you refuse a small request that you always accepted before, a strange and frightening phenomenon will occur. People you thought couldn't live without you suddenly disappear without a word of goodbye. People who used to cry and beg for your help, who said you were the only one who understood them, now turn cold as if you never existed. Initially, you'll think this is just a temporary misunderstanding. You'll try to explain, apologize, even return to old habits to fix the relationship. But when this happens time after time, with person after person, you'll be forced to face a painful reality: this isn't coincidence. This is the true nature of the relationships you've protected with your blood and flesh. This realization isn't easy to accept. Most people in your life don't love you for who you are. They love what you do for them. They love the convenience you provide. They love the feeling of being cared for, listened to, having problems solved without having to reciprocate in kind. They love having someone always available, always putting them first, always sacrificing for their comfort. When you stop providing these services, when you start having your own needs and boundaries, their love quickly withers and dies. This shows that from the beginning, it was never really love in the true sense. It was just an implicit agreement. They received care and service, you received the illusion of being loved and needed. But here's what most people don't realize, you also never truly loved them. You thought you loved them, but really you just loved the feeling of being needed that they provided. You loved the savior role you played in their lives. You loved the feeling of importance, usefulness, irreplaceability that this relationship created. This is why losing these people, though initially painful, is actually a gift. It's like necessary surgery to remove a malignant tumor. Painful in the process, but necessary for long-term health. Jung had a profound observation: sometimes you need to stand alone to discover that you can actually stand firm. Losing people who don't truly love you is the way to discover the inner strength you didn't know you had. It's the way to learn that your value doesn't depend on being useful to someone. This process is also like a great purification. You're removing toxic, fake, one-sided relationships to create space for truly genuine, balanced, mutual relationships. You're abandoning people who only know how to take so you can find people who know both how to give and receive. And the people who remain after this purification process? These are the real diamonds among the pebbles. They will love you for who you truly are, with flaws, boundaries, personal needs. They will respect your decisions instead of trying to manipulate. They will care about your happiness as much as you care about theirs. This is truly the foundation of relationships worth living for, worth cherishing. Not based on dependence and exploitation, but based on mutual respect and truly unconditional love. There's a beautiful paradox here: when you stop trying to keep everyone by sacrificing yourself, the people truly worth keeping will automatically stay. And when you stop fearing losing everyone, you can truly love those who deserve to be loved. Too, you will experience a period of deep loneliness, but it's time for rebirth. After the parasites and fake relationships leave your life, you'll enter a period that Carl Jung called the desert of solitude. This isn't punishment or a sign that you've done something wrong. Instead, this may be the most sacred and important time in your entire life. For the first time in decades, possibly since you were a child, you get to be completely alone with yourself. No one else's drama constantly invading your mind. No emergency phone calls at midnight to solve someone's crisis. No endless requests for help. No one else's problems needing your thought and solutions. Just absolute silence, something you feared for years but is actually what your soul craves most. Initially, this silence can feel scary, even terrifying. You've become accustomed to a noisy, chaotic life full of interruptions and demands from outside. When all of that suddenly disappears, you might feel like you're lost in a vast desert, not knowing where to go. This is the stage that many people can't get through. They panic at this silence, afraid to face themselves, afraid to discover the thoughts and emotions they've used helping others to avoid for years. They rush to fill this void, by returning to old relationships, by finding new people to rescue, or by drowning in work, shopping, entertainment so they don't have to be alone with themselves. But if you have enough courage to stay in this desert, if you can endure the initial discomfort and allow yourself to truly experience solitude, miraculous things will begin to happen. You'll start remembering who you used to be. Hobbies you abandoned because you didn't have time or because others didn't understand will slowly resurface. Dreams you buried because they were considered unrealistic or selfish will begin to whisper your name. Parts of yourself that you sacrificed to please others will slowly resurrect like new shoots after a long winter. You'll discover amazing inner strength you never knew you had. When there's no one to depend on, when there's no one to save you from your problems, you're forced to rely on yourself. And surprisingly, you discover you're stronger, smarter, more resilient, and more capable of solving problems than you ever imagined. You'll learn to distinguish between loneliness and isolation. Isolation is when you want to connect but can't. Loneliness, in this case, is precious time you spend connecting with yourself, something you haven't done in years, even decades. The word loneliness no longer synonymous with failure or pitiful but becomes synonymous with freedom, autonomy, and self-healing. You'll discover simple joys you had forgotten. The joy of reading a book without anyone interrupting. The joy of sitting with morning coffee without having to listen to someone talk about their problems. The joy of walking alone without having to worry about someone else's emotions or needs. These small joys, which in the past you might have considered selfish or waste of time, now become sacred moments of self-care and recovery. Jung wrote, "The path to wholeness must go through the desert of solitude." He understood that to become a complete human being, to find your true self, you must have the courage to face yourself in absolute silence. This isn't an easy process. There will be nights when you feel lonely to the core, when the silence becomes too heavy and you want to call someone, anyone, just to hear a human voice. There will be moments when you doubt your decision, wondering if you're being too harsh, too demanding, too selfish. But if you persist, if you trust this process, you'll gradually realize that this loneliness isn't punishment but a priceless gift. This is the time when you can finally reconnect with your soul, with your true values, with the person you really want to become. And when you emerge from this desert, you'll no longer be the old person. You'll be stronger, clearer about what you want, and capable of creating truly healthy and mutual relationships. You'll no longer need love from anyone at any cost, because you've learned to love and cherish yourself. 3. Your financial situation will improve significantly. This is perhaps one of the most shocking and unexpected changes that most people don't anticipate. Your wallet will thicken amazingly when you stop buying affection and acceptance from others. Let's pause and do a simple but potentially shocking calculation exercise. Look back at the past financial year and count how much money you spent on things you didn't really want to buy, didn't really need, or didn't bring real value to your life. Endless contributions and donations. Birthdays of colleagues you're not even close to. Weddings of distant friends you only see once a year. Baby showers of neighbors you only greet in passing. Company charity funds you felt pressured to participate in so you wouldn't be seen as not having team spirit. Class reunion funds you didn't want to join but were afraid of being talked about badly. Compensation gifts when refusing someone. When you couldn't attend an event, you sent an expensive gift to apologize and prove you still cared. When you couldn't help someone move, you hired professional movers for them. When you couldn't babysit for someone, you paid for a babysitter. When you couldn't help someone with work, you bought them expensive things to compensate. Loans that are never repaid. Money you lent knowing you'd never see it again. Advances to colleagues. Emergency money for friends that they never mention paying back, and you don't dare ask for because you're afraid of being seen as calculating. Spending to buy affection and acceptance. Always being the one to pay when dining with friends. Buying expensive things to impress or fit in with a social group. Spending money on activities you don't really enjoy just to be invited next time. Buying birthday and anniversary gifts too expensive for your financial ability to be praised as generous. Opportunity costs from not daring to negotiate. Accepting lower salaries because you didn't dare negotiate. Not daring to ask for raises because you're afraid of being seen as demanding. Accepting unfavorable contract terms because you're afraid of making things difficult for people. Not daring to ask for discounts or negotiate better conditions because you want to be seen as easygoing. When you add all these amounts together, the figure can reach thousands, even tens of thousands of dollars per year, money you've burned in desperate attempts to maintain the illusion of being loved and accepted. But the change more important than all these numbers is the fundamental shift in spending psychology. You dare to say I don't have money when you really don't have money. Instead of borrowing, using credit cards, or touching savings to help others or maintain the image of a generous person, you learn to be honest about your financial situation. You understand that telling the truth about financial ability isn't shameful but is responsibility to yourself. You buy things you really need and want, instead of buying to impress. Instead of spending money on expensive items just so others think you're successful or have good taste, you invest in things that truly bring value to your life. You buy quality instead of quantity, buy